So in this segment, we're going to attempt to break down this article from this guy called Ambrose Evans Pritchard, or Picard, depending on if you want the Star Trek pronunciation of his name, where he talks about Angela Merkel. He blames Angela Merkel as the leading as the leading politician for Brexit and a broken EU. So he talks about a lot in this article, and the question we need to ask ourselves are how much of this is legitimate criticism and how much of this is a hit piece? Because some of the things he raises are valid, but some of the same points you could make more aggressively towards other countries, specifically the UK. And so we're going to be analysing this, article as best as I can because there's a lot to talk about here. Um, but also we're going to look at some of the previous work of this guy Ambrose Evans Pritchard, and that will give us some more insight into what's his ideology. And so let's talk about this because you can easily criticize someone if you look at the other side of things, but if you agree with them on their stance and you say, well, I disagree with what they've done here, despite the fact that maybe you agree with them, it does make you look like a massive fraud. Something that I've tried to avoid doing on this channel and tried to give credit where it's due as best as I can. But that's enough of me rambling. Let's see what the ramblings of Ambrose Evans Pritchard are. So Angela Merkel is more responsible for Brexit than any other political figure in Europe on either side of the channel. So basically, he's saying that Angela Merkel is more responsible for Brexit than Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove. Who else is there? I said Nigel Farage. And whoever else was involved with Brexit. Gisela Stewart and insert other names here. So basically saying that Angela Merkel was the single most responsible politician for Brexit. Okay, that's a bold statement, and as the man said in I think it's the film Dodgeball, that's a bold statement, Cotton. Let's see how the rest of it goes or something like that. So we've got that stance. So she bears responsibility for the Japanization and austerity bias of the monetary union. So Japanization, it refers to the idea that an economy could endure a sustained period of low growth expansion accompanied by low levels of inflation. This is a model I disagree with. I think austerity doesn't work. I think that Keynesian economics makes a lot more sense. Investment in the economy and investment in projects in order to drive growth. I feel, in my opinion, not being an economist, it makes a lot more sense. But I've spoken to Georgia about it, and I think that's the position she more readily agrees with, rather than the austerity approach, which has proven not to work. So yes, austerity is obviously when you reduce spending and normally you increase taxes in order to generate more money for the government. And you make sure you cut things like welfare and other projects in order to save as much money as you can. I don't think that stance makes sense. But the question we need to ask ourselves is that, does this man disagree with austerity? Probably not, which is something we'll talk about in a bit. She exalts the German mercantilist trade surpluses that render the whole EU project ultimately unworkable. So what that word means is that you want to maximize exports and minimize imports, which is an economic model to go for, but at the same time, no country has been really able to reduce imports massively because we're always reliant on other countries, and other countries have expertise in certain fields which certain countries don't have. So for example, if you think Germany's expertise is in cars and other manufactured goods, or something like Italy's specialities in, say, food, for example, well, Germany can't rival Italy when it comes to food and certain produce. So that means you're going to have to always import stuff. So you can always reduce certain things that you import, but you can't reduce everything. So he goes on to talk about, so he talks about how this is unworkable in the Euro project ultimately. We feel the fond of Muti as she winds down her 16-year reign and ushers in her chosen candidate Armin Laschet, the continuity candidate and folksy operator who narrowly won the Christian Democratic contest over the weekend. I think generally leaders shouldn't get involved in leadership contests because it undermines the process and it can be really awkward when your candidate loses. But at the same time, that's her prerogative. The Chancellor is immensely popular. The low-key style of the Vicar's daughter has caught the German mood. She is one of the few European leaders still trusted over the handling of the pandemic. It's hard to think of any figure in Berlin able to mask German hegemony and throw a reassuring comfort blanket over Europe. I mean, to be fair, she has dealt with the pandemic way better than the UK has, to the point where they were sending us ventilators for free because they were like, yo, dog, I see you're not doing too good. Here, this might be able to help you. So, has she dealt with the pandemic far better than the UK? 100 times yes. It's a very low bar, but Germany jumped it. But this is his main issue, the writer of this article. But the blizzard of superlatives over recent days, bordering over the Hagia Sophia, some Hagia Sophia graphically. I don't even know if that's even a word. Some dissent is in order. Personality must be separated from policies. And so here, he's saying that, because everyone's being nice to her, I'm going to be a dick. And, that's his stance. He's allowed to have that stance. But when you have a stance like that, it makes a lot of your criticisms look very stupid. So there's that. So her Christian Democrat Alliance, CDU and CSU, suffered its biggest defeat since the Second World War in the elections of 2017. The German political landscape fractured, votes splintered in all directions. The hard-right Alternative for Deutschland became the official opposition in the Bundestag. So his criticism is her parties are not doing great. And therefore it's on her. Partially it is on her, but at the same time the fact that she's been in power since 2005 shows you how popular she is as a leader, and that political parties do typically tend to lose votes as you start going through multiple election cycles. That's something we saw with New Labour as well. Some of it is down to policy, some of it is down to people thinking this guy's going to win, why do I need to come out, and other people sort of being a bit disenfranchised, saying that, why do I need to come out and vote? I don't really believe in this guy's policies too much, or this person's policies too much. So it's a decent-ish criticism, but not the sharpest one. Merkel held on to power because the two great Volksparteien, German words here, Christian Democratic and Social Democrats, clung to each other on the shrinking raft. I mean, did they win enough to hold a majority? Yes. Is that job done? Yes. The role of political parties is to win. Collectively, they won. This is another crappy criticism from the author here. Her personal standing is not transferable to Mr. Laschet, the coal miner's son, still living in the coal age. He opened a new coal-fired plant last year, asserting with a straight face and Trumpian surrealism that it would be good for climate change. There goes Europe's net zero authority. I mean, that's not true at all. He's very stupid for opening a coal plant. Germany is very reliant on coal plants. It's not the smartest thing for Germany to be doing, but to argue that there goes Europe's net zero authority is stupid because there are so many other countries in Europe. Britain recently opened a coal plant in Cumbria. I don't see this man criticising Britain for doing that. This guy, Mr. Laschet, I disagree with him vehemently for opening a coal plant. I think you need to invest more in renewables. But if at this point in time he had to be pragmatic and open a coal plant to keep the German energy sector going, then fair enough. But I want to see, this guy as well start opening more into renewables to move Germany off coal. That's what I would want to see. But, not the best criticism again from this guy. Why Merkel has presided over an era of economic outperformance within Europe, it is not Wirtschaft Wunder by global standards, and that means the miracle in the Rhine. So she didn't perform any miracles. So now we're criticizing world leaders for not performing miracles. Like what? Germany has been one of the slowest growing economies in the OECD over the last quarter century, slower than Japan. Productivity growth has averaged 1.2% annually since 1995, compared to 1.7% in the US or 3.9% in Korea, OECD data. And so the question you need to ask ourselves are these numbers bad? I couldn't tell you. I'm not an economist student. I can tell you, they're having steady growth, which is a good thing. But these aren't the best numbers, but they're better than ours. So if we look here, this is Germany's average data. You can see they took a huge hit in 2009, as most people did. There was a global recession. So you can see here, it falling. You can see they had a massive growth in 2010, 2011. A bit of slow growth here. In the 0 points, 2.12, these numbers aren't the best. But if we look at the UK's growth here, you've got 0.9, 1.54, 1.479, nothing above 3, really, when it comes to our growth. If you look at theirs, they've had massive amounts of growth. It's a bit more volatile, but I remember when we went through a double dip recession and things like that. it looks like Germany might have had one, or technical recessions, all this stuff, all the jargon. But what we can gather from this is Germany's economy has done far better than Britain's. And so the question we need to ask ourselves are, where was this man's criticisms for David Cameron? Where were they for Theresa May's? And where are they for Boris Johnson's? Because if he's not going to criticise these people, then we can ascertain that this man is a partisan hack who is looking to nitpick. And Angeline Germany, these words this man uses, he's trying to seem smart, but he's not. Has echoes of the Brezhnev era. The immobilization is remarkable. A point made by both Marcel, again German names, Frencher, in Die Deutschland Illusion, and Die Welt's Olaf Gresserman in his book The Germany Bubble, the last hurrah of a great economic nation. The country was for a while able to ride the China wave as a supplier of capital goods for Asia, but China's catch-up phase has since turned into import substitution at home and mid-technology conquest abroad, more or less destroying the German solar industry in the process. So first you criticised her for following a model of maximum exports and minimum imports, and now you're mad at her for importing and substituting things from China. Which one is it? Are you mad at her for minimizing imports, or are you now mad at her for importing stuff from China? Like, you cannot have it both ways. Germany has not made the switch to digital in time, unlike Korea, and this is becoming existential as cars metamorphose into computers on wheels. Tesla is worth more than 3 times as much as VW, Daimler, and BMW combined. Apple dwarfed the entire capitalization of the DAX index. So how are you going to criticize Angela Merkel for this? I did not realize she was in charge of VW. I did not realize she was the, whatever their business structure is, the CEO of, Volkswagen. Or is it the case that these companies are responsible for the fact that they are not as successful as something like Tesla, despite the fact that Tesla is a very high bar because it is industry leading? Perhaps questions need to be asked of them. And him saying, Apple dwarfs the entire stock market capitalization of the DAX index. Germany does not have a big stock market. Germany, the main 3 stock markets in the world are in Japan, the UK, and the USA. So criticizing them for, how small the German stock market is worth is very stupid. Especially when you say Apple dwarfs them. Well, Apple dwarf most companies in the FTSE 100. Are you criticizing them? Deutschland Inc. is not worth much anymore, a fate it shares with UK Limited. I tried to Google what UK Limited is, I couldn't figure it out. Merkel has presided over the structural decay. It is not her fault, but nor has she done anything about it. So again, he's saying that she should have done more, but he doesn't actually state what he's talking about here. Him saying that, what did you want her to do, big man? That's the question. What did you want her to do about it? Because you're not giving many solutions here, which leads me to the point that perhaps he's just being critical for the sake of it again, which is a trend with this guy. So the German economy only looks good within regional beauty contest of Europe. So because they're doing one of the best in Europe, you're saying, oh, you're only good because you're in Europe. What about all the other countries in the world who have different models and different labour regulations and all this stuff? Well, why are you not holding the UK to that standard then, if that's the case? Because clearly you're not, and you haven't done, based on some of the other headlines I've seen from this same guy. Others are in worse shape. The deformed structure of the monetary union has had the effect of leveraging relative supremacy. So he's saying Germany's only top dog because of the monetary union, so the euro. Germany gained Eurozone competitiveness within the early 2000s through an internal devaluation. It compresses real wages through the Hartz IV reforms. Again, I'm not an economics major, so I can't really inform you too much on some of this stuff. But again, if this man's for higher wages, then I hope he's written articles about being for higher wages. If not, he's looking for a point to critique and then seeing that, she tried to suppress wages here. And if he's not for higher wages, then why are you criticizing someone for something that you're for? That's the point I'm going to trying to drum into this video here, of this man criticizing someone for doing this. If wages went up, he would criticize her for having unstable minimum wages and all this stuff. Once Southern Europe had slipped behind within the closed deflationary structure of the euro, the only way to claw back ground was to carry out their own internal devaluations, an impossible task against the German anchor. the system of the hair shirt policies in so many countries at once was to tip the whole system into a contradictory vortex, just like this article, a contradictory vortex. So here he's saying that the only way out for the euro was to devalue it, but Germany were against devaluing it, so we couldn't do that. Okay, I guess, if that's the solution, then fair enough. But, would devaluing have solved a lot of the problems they had? Probably not. Again, I'm not an economics major. Merkel did not create this structure, but she never questioned it either, or explained to the German people why it had to change. Maybe she didn't think it had to change. Her government imposed austerity overkill on Club Mediterranean. Again, are you against austerity or not? Through its control over the key bodies in the EU apparatus, the burden of adjustment fell on debtor states, not the creditors. The burden of adjustment, so the debtors were meant to sort out the adjustment on the loans and not the creditors. This cannot work. I mean, I don't know what this man is talking about. She let Eurozone debt crisis, actually a capital flow crisis, fester for 3 years before contagion of the Italian and Spanish debt markets forced their hand in June 2012. And the thing is, right, to an extent, I do agree that the Eurozone crisis was handled very poorly from the other countries, Germany and France. He doesn't mention France here for some reason. Germany and France the way they dealt with the Eurozone countries, specifically Greece, was in the worst way possible. That combined with the IMF with crippling austerity and privatization, which we know these things do not work on an economic scale. They don't make sense and they cause low amounts of growth and massive amounts of pain to people. You cannot follow a model of austerity. It does not work. And so the IMF and the European Central Bank, Germany specifically here, putting rampant austerity, inflicting austerity onto other countries is wrong. And I agree that this was one of Merkel's failures. But I agree from the standpoint of, I don't think austerity is a good policy. This man disagrees here because he wants something to nitpick. Merkel then reneged on a summit deal for full banking union. The sovereign bank doom loop remains in place, and it's even larger today. So a banking union, let's check out what that means. So a banking union is, for the European Union, is the transfer of responsibility for banking policy from the national to the EU level in several countries of the European Union. So this man wanted, by the looks of things, wanted a banking union, or said Merkel should have went for a banking union when that transfers more power to the EU, which is something that I don't think this guy would want, to be honest. And so he's criticising her again for something that he would probably disagree with if it actually happened. And so here she resisted a necessary move to a fiscal union at every stage. And a fiscal union is the integration of the fiscal policy of nation states. Under fiscal unions, decisions about the collection and expenditure of taxes are taken by common institutions. So here you would see that the way taxes are collected and spent, so tax rates and things like that, would be decided by the EU. And that's a very stupid policy because different countries want different tax rates for different reasons. Ireland wants lower tax rates because they want to be a tax haven for big business, which is something I disagree with. The same with the Netherlands. Maybe Germany wants slightly higher taxes for other reasons. But what you can see here is that this man is criticizing the EU again. Criticizing Merkel for a policy he would probably be against, and which is not a good idea. A fiscal union for that many countries is not a good idea. And so he's being mad that she didn't want a fiscal union. You can see the fraudulence within this article here. When the pandemic hit, she agreed to a one-off recovery fund that reverts to the status quo ante over time, heading off permanent debt mutualization. In short, she spent 16 years refusing to rebuild the euro on workable foundations. Her idea of fiscal union is fiscal surveillance. The surveillance pact, I googled these things again. I have no real clue what he's talking about here. But what you can see here is he's mad that there was so much austerity and things like that, but at the same time, is this man actually against austerity? I don't think so. The mismanagement of monetary union altered British perceptions of the EU before the Brexit referendum. We'll talk about at the end of the article what Brexit was about, what the key arguments in Brexit was, and it wasn't this. Or it was part of the Eurozone crisis, was part of it, but it wasn't a major factor in it. It also led to the migration of several 100,000 economic refugees from Southern Europe and displaced flows from Eastern Europe into the UK. This combined into a perfect storm with Merkel's precipitous decision to go it alone in 2015 and open the floodgates from the Middle East, ignoring David Cameron's counsel that the Syrian refugee crisis was best handled by the Levant. And the thing is, the UK didn't do enough to help migrants escaping a war zone that the UK helped to create in countries like Libya, for example. But I disagree with what Merkel did. You have to, even when it comes to refugees, you have to assess people before they come in. You cannot let people come in with an open door policy because you don't know who these people are and you don't know if they're dangerous. So again, it was not a good policy from from Angela Merkel. But again, the argument of the monetary union altering British perceptions is pretty fraudulent. Before the Brexit referendum, is a pretty fraudulent argument because that stuff wasn't really talked about during the referendum as much. But then, of course, the Chancellor had already sown the seeds of British exasperation. It began in earnest when she resuscitated the European Constitution, rebranded the Lisbon Treaty after it had been rejected by the French and Dutch people in referenda. Her motive was obvious. It increased the German voting weight in EU institutions. This was a legitimate step to reflect Germany's increased population after the East and West reunification, but it also changed the EU's character. So basically saying she wanted more people, more German representation in the EU because of Germany's increased population. So again, why is this a criticism? I don't understand. Because we've seen in the US where they argue that certain states should have more senators because they have a higher population, therefore should have higher representation within the Senate. So this man's argument, again, is fraudulent. Germany was no longer primus inter pares in an again, the words he uses are so annoying and so pretentious, because if we actually try and look up these phrases, we see that primus inter pares is typically used as an honorary title for someone who is formally equal to other members of their group but is accorded unofficial respect. So someone who is, a senior, essentially, you've got a group of people and you give this person who unofficial respect, because kind of like a captain without an armband on the football pitch, someone like Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid. For example, he didn't wear the captain's armband, but he kind of was a second captain on the pitch, like that. And primus inter pares, the first among equals, a senior or representative member in the group. So basically, someone who has that has that respect, which is more formal. And so he's basing that it's a huge difference, when I don't really think it is. France strangely allowed the loss of sacred parity to slip through. Nicolas Sarkozy was fobbed off with a few baubles. Tony Blair pretended it was only cleaning up exercise. The treaty ran through the EU Council by executive fiat. Nobody wanted to face voters again. Only the Irish were given a referenda, which they voted no, and had their feet held to the fire and were made to vote again. Again, this is lying, as if we actually look at what happened here. Promises made to Ireland on the Lisbon Treaty. So Ireland got special dispensation over the Lisbon Treaty. Things like when it comes to, where is it gone? It should be stuff to do with here it is. The Irish gained assurances that the new Lisbon Treaty would not affect their neutrality, taxation policies, or strict abortion laws, which while also promising them a seat at the European Commission. So the Irish were actually given a lot here in the second referendum they were asked to vote on. Their feet were not held to the fire. If anything, they were given massive massive concessions by the EU in this, by giving them a seat at the table and also allowing them to keep the stupid abortion policies and also their tax laws. So again, this man, again, he's lying once again. Merkel's Lisbon Treaty was a watershed moment. It is one thing to advocate for the project by Monnet method of stealth, is another to do so once major proposals had been explicitly rejected by electorates. Again, Ireland had a second referendum and they were given special dispensations. It further undermines the EU's legitimacy amongst British politicians, commentators and financiers, and these people would matter. Again, he's lying here and he's making a big deal out of something that is nothing. The treaty gave the European Court of Justice a jurisdiction over areas of the EU for the first time. upgrading it from an economic tribunal into a Supreme Court. The Charter of Fundamental Rights became legally binding. The ECJ suddenly acquired the means to rule on anything. It has since used that power expansively, as the German Constitutional Court ironically protests with irritation. And so here you can see that the European Court of Justice became the highest court within EU countries, and again, I don't have many issues with that, apart from I've seen some howler weird decisions, but at the same time, as long as the right judges get put in place, I'm not too concerned about it. The common law protocol in the treaty exempting British courts from such encroachment was ignored before the ink was dry. The European Court began to strike down British laws on criminal procedure or data sharing with the US intelligence agencies. Another slice of influential British opinion peeled away. I mean, if it's the case that the European Court of Justice cannot do this, and it was in the treaty, then clearly more should have been done about this. But if that was not the case, then clearly this man's wrong. Chancellor Merkel persisted. She circumvented a British veto on the fiscal compact, ramming through the treaty by other means and visibly isolating Prime Minister. And so this is, let's find this. So basically what happened was, European leaders say 26 out of the 27 member states have backed a tax and budget pact to tackle the Eurozone debt crisis. So basically what happened was, David Cameron, only the UK said it would not join. Prime Minister David Cameron said he had wanted to protect British interests, including the financial markets. And so what that means is there was clearly some regulation that was going to go into place that would have impacted the City of London, all those kind of people whose money makes money. And so Cameron said, we want to protect these. The EU said no. And so the EU basically made the pact, and it looks like they made it an opt-in where EU countries could decide whether they wanted to join, and that kind of circumvents Britain's veto. A scummy move, yes. Very slick politics, yes. But was this one of the things that people talked about at the Brexit referendum? No. She installed ultra-integrationist Jean-Claude Juncker as Commission Chief against British objections, then violated the Brussels Convention, a convention which is less formal than a treaty, that no major state is overruled on this key post. She refused a compromise despite warnings from David Cameron that a taste of Junckerism would further erode British consent for the EU, as proved to be the case. I mean, hardly anyone mentioned Jean-Claude Juncker during the referendum. I don't think anyone could actually tell you what the man's job was. If it is in Germany's national interest to keep the UK tied deeply into the European Union, and few Germans dispute that, one can hardly argue that she made a good fist of it. She meddled with the constitutional machinery of Europe to irritate the British. No, she didn't. She did so because she thought that was in Germany's and the EU's best interest, probably more so Germany than the EU. But she didn't do so to annoy the British. She did so because she wanted to do stuff with the Eurozone and the EU. I don't understand why this man doesn't understand that. Not everything is about us, but not enough to sort out the EU's real problem or to make monetary union fit for purpose. I mean, the Eurozone bailout and a lot of the things Germany and other countries did with regards to the bailout were very stupid, but at the same time, the UK could have intervened, but we chose not to, and that's on us. If this guy wanted something to be different, he should have asked the UK to intervene, but he didn't. Muti is an admirable person and a canny tactical politician, but she will leave a set of unstable equilibria, a polite way of saying a trail of wreckage. If Lachette is the continuity candidate, Europe needs help. I mean, she hasn't left a trail of wreckage, though, is it? Really? I mean, Germany are in a much better financial position than we are. If you look at countries' debt to GDP, you can see the UK is currently at 1100%, whilst Germany is at about 72%. So Germany is in a much better financial position than the UK. So I wonder why this man has not talked about these issues when it comes to the UK. And if we actually look at what some of the articles this man has written, EU threatens wartime occupation of vaccine vaccine makers as AstraZeneca crisis spirals. They haven't threatened wartime occupation, so again, he's lying. Scapegoat is AstraZeneca for the AstraZeneca is the scapegoat for European Commission's staggering institutional failures. Again, we've covered this in a video, but the AstraZeneca were the ones who caused the problem in the first place. The only thing I would argue the EU's problem was that they needed more factories to produce the vaccine and should have pushed on AstraZeneca to set up more facilities to actually make the vaccines. After vaccine euphoria, it could be back to square one with COVID escape variants. I mean, okay. Um, here Joe Biden ushers in the Keynesian inflation era of the 2020s. So clearly he's against Keynesian economics, saying that it's going to cause massive inflation. So this man's against austerity. He's against Keynesian economics. The question is, what does this man actually believe in? And then he talks here, Biden's mega stimulus widens the staggering gap in fiscal support between the US and the Eurozone. And so the question we need to ask ourselves are, what does this man actually believe in? Because on the one hand, he's talked about in the main article that austerity is bad. Now he's talked about Keynesian economics leading to massive inflation and Biden ushering that era. And now he's complaining that Biden's stimulus, which is in part Keynesian economics, is going to cause a massive, staggering support gap between the US and the Eurozone, but also he forgets to mention that the UK are also involved in that. So, US eyes early rate rise as inflation threatens to bite, and he's blaming Biden on that in part. So what can we gather from this video? This guy here, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, is a partisan hack who is looking for anything to attack Angela Merkel with. I have laid out my criticisms in this video of Angela Merkel, not from the pandemic response, because I think Germany have had a good pandemic response, much better than the UK's. My argument is that she dealt with the Eurozone crisis back in the early 2010s horribly. She imposed crippling austerity on multiple countries, which has caused massive problems, specifically Greece. She hasn't given countries the support they needed during this last crisis, the pandemic. And so Angela Merkel holds a responsibility for following a path of austerity on other countries. Has her reign been perfect? No. No leader has had a perfect reign. Has her leadership been great, as in everything that she has done? Maybe. Has it been good? Definitely. She's had a good run of things. And she's done fine. With Germany, with the Eurozone, she should have done much better, specifically with the bailouts and things like that. But do I hold her solely responsible for these things? No. Is she responsible for Brexit? Definitely not. The key arguments for Brexit were control our money, land and borders, and that we could do trade deals with other countries that are better than what the EU has, that are bespoke to Britain. Those were the key arguments. Want less immigration. He blames the the British reaction to all of the immigration coming to the UK from the EU on Germany by not dealing with the Eurozone crisis properly. People, Eastern Europeans, were going to the UK instead of the Southern European countries, and that led to Brexit. What led to Brexit was the rampant xenophobia that his side pushed. That's one of the key factors in Brexit. Oh no, you might be living next door to a Romanian, they're dangerous. We don't want more Romanians here. There's so many here that you can't get a place for schools, you can't get a place in hospitals, you can't get a doctor's appointment. When we know the key reason is austerity, which this man may or may not support. I have no idea, because this man's such a hack that he can't keep his argument straight. So again, Angela Merkel's reign hasn't been perfect. It has been good, outstanding, maybe not great, maybe not, but she's done better as leader of Germany than any of the last prime ministers we've had in charge of the UK. And this man here clearly does not want to criticise the UK, and clearly wants the UK to break free of the shackles of the EU and do absolutely nothing, because our industries are getting absolutely hammered because of Brexit. But this video has gone on for a very long time. How long have we been running for? Almost half an hour. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.